welcome to the Irresistible Marketing Pod, the podcast that wants to show you how you can stop masking and sell more. I'm your host, Isa Gauchi, your marketing confidence cheerleader and owner of the Isa Messaging digital marketing agency for small business baddies such as yourself. Today, I want to warn you about the Formality Trap, or why formality and marketing often don't play well together, especially for us coaches, creatives, and service providers who are working directly with clients. So one of the biggest mistakes that I've seen across the board in business copywriting is the aim to appear formal, clinically sterile, and professional. While this might feel like the safe choice, formal marketing copywriting usually actually translates to bland, vague, personality-less, unrelatable, and forgettable, which is probably not what you're going for in your marketing. So let's break down the temptation to dilute your copywriting with formality and what to do instead. So let's first talk about why so many of us are really tempted to show up with this mask, this veneer of formality when we're writing on our sales page or our blog or showing up on video or even posting on social media. I really think that it's often a defense mechanism, because many folks have the mistaken impression that the smarter, more expert, more important you are, the more formally you would present yourself. So the greater the gap you feel between how smart you consider yourself to be, how expert you consider yourself to be, how important you consider yourself to be, the more you will be tempted to mask your marketing in a cloak of formality. Because here's the thing, I don't know about you, but the most successful people that I know don't bother trying to sound successful because they just are successful. They believe themselves to be successful, so however they talk is how a successful person would talk. And they know that. They're confident in it. Similarly, experts confident in their expertise don't waste the energy trying to sound like an expert because they know that they are an expert. So however they talk is how an expert talks. Someone with mastery of a complex, difficult subject matter doesn't need to seek validation by impressing everyone with how complex and difficult the subject matter is. They make their knowledge helpful to others by explaining it in an accessible way. Like, didn't Einstein say, if you can't explain it to a 6-year-old, you don't understand it yourself? My point is that the more you try to sound like an expert, the less confidence you appear to have in your expertise. And if it is the job of marketing to convince your ideal customers that you are best equipped to help them, the emphasis of your copywriting should be far less on what you sound like, how you appear, and far more on how you can help your particular customer with their particular problem. So your marketing, its function is not to be your resume, it's to be a conversation with your ideal aligned customers, or at least it should be. And that's when it's most effective. When you take the perspective, the role of having a conversation designed to help your aligned customers with a struggle that you know how to relieve or solve. It's not a resume because it's not ultimately about you. So I take the position that vulnerability is actually a way better strategy for your marketing than formality is. Because when I read marketing copy that is overly formal, I tend to think one of two things about it. Either one, they are not feeling very confident in themselves, their business, or their offer, or the value they're saying they provide. Or two, Someone who has zero idea how to do marketing wrote this. Neither of which, again, I think are the impression that most of us want to leave people with when they encounter our marketing. So here's why I think that's the case, that formality serves as more of a separation between us and our audience than it serves to attract people to us. The problem is, and the defense mechanism that formality is serving for a lot of us, is that formality tends to obscure vulnerability. But good marketing requires vulnerability, and here is why. Visibility is inherently vulnerable. Like stepping out on a stage under a spotlight, vulnerable, right? Telling people you have something you poured a lot of your blood, sweat, and tears into, your heart went into making it this offer, and you're putting it up for sale for people to take or leave, like we're doing when we're in business. That's vulnerable. That is being visible in a way that many people find very uncomfortable, especially at first if you have recently gone into business, or you are in a new type of business, or you are showing up in a way that feels more close to your heart, right? Putting yourself out like that, it's inherently vulnerable. But at the same time, how are you going to sell anything if no one can see you? If no one knows you are selling something, if no one knows you have anything to offer. So selling stuff, your marketing requires you to be visible, which means it requires you to be vulnerable. So of course, a lot of us are going to look for ways to alleviate the discomfort of that visibility, of that vulnerability. And I think a go-to for a lot of us is formality. And we think it's for professional reasons, but really it's to protect how we are feeling about how much of ourselves we are exposing to risk of rejection. So here's also why this is an issue when we're wanting to connect with our aligned clients. So most of my audience, a lot of us are in areas where we work very closely with people. A lot of us are coaches, we're creatives, we are service providers, we're working directly with people, often to solve problems that feel vulnerable for our clients to address. And so we are just the act of buying, working with us, even before getting into the work we are doing is vulnerable, because we're asking them to make a leap of faith and to trust that our offer will benefit them in the ways we are saying it will, that it will feel worth the money and will feel worth the investment of time, energy, attention, trust in us. We're asking for our clients to be vulnerable just to buy in the first place and participate. But then when you get into the work, and it's an added layer of the work itself is deeply vulnerable. It requires a high level of vulnerability from the client, a high level of trust in you to be able to be a safe space to hold that vulnerability without making it worse, right? And to actually help in this vulnerable space for our clients. We got to make ourselves a safe space for the vulnerability that we are asking customers for. Otherwise, it's just not going to work. We're asking for too big of a leap of faith from customers. So to make ourselves a safe place for the vulnerability we're asking customers for, this usually means we have to allow vulnerability from ourselves in our marketing to show why we have the capacity, for the empathy, for the compassion to be able to hold space for our clients' vulnerability without making them feel worse about it, right? Especially if you are helping to alleviate shame of some kind. So if your customers feel ashamed of experiencing the problem in the first place, they'll feel much more comfortable relating to someone who can empathize with firsthand experience than someone who popped out of the womb utterly perfect in this area. Like, say you are a coach that helps people with people pleasing, codependency behaviors. I think it's so effective, like the top codependency coaches you're going to see online, talk about their own experience, their own journey with codependency, with people pleasing, like how these struggles caused them pain in their lives and what made them decide to make a change and how they supported themselves through such a change. Like you're going to trust that person more explaining like the embarrassing aspects of your own struggle with people pleasing, with boundarylessness, with over functioning, with codependency, with maladaptive coping mechanisms, than someone that's like, I've literally never had any problem setting boundaries. I've never had any problem communicating. No one's ever taken advantage of me. I've just always had perfect confidence and stood up for myself forever. And I don't understand this weakness y'all are struggling with. So you should come listen to me because I have I've never had this struggle. So come learn from me how to deal with it. Like, of these two providers, which one do you feel safe getting vulnerable with, right? Like, which one feels like a safer environment to hold space for you through this struggle that you might have some shame around? Okay. So the other reason I think that so many of us tend to default to formality as this maladaptive marketing mechanism. I just made that up. Woo. Trademark. No, just kidding. I think one of the things that us entrepreneurs, especially if we have personal brands, especially if this is like our heart's work, this is very close to our heart, the work we're putting out there for sale, is that we have a hard time separating someone deciding not to buy and understanding that's not the same thing as them telling us we suck as a person, or it doesn't mean that we suck as a person, or that our business is doomed to fail, or we're not as good as we thought we were. It doesn't mean any of those things, but a lot of us really conflate this. What is true is that someone declining to buy has nothing to do with how good or worthy you are as a person, or even as an entrepreneur, or even as a business owner or service provider. But so many of us accidentally conflate these things. The decision to buy is a matter of how much they think they will benefit from your offer. Again, it's about them. It's not about you. It's not about you. But when you are confusing sales for an acceptance or rejection of your value as a person, as a business owner, as a CEO, of course you'll want to appear perfectly in an attempt to minimize the risk of rejection and what that will do to your own self-image, your own identity, the way you talk to yourself, the way you understand yourself, the story you tell yourself about your meaning in this world, the meaning of your work in this world. That's real painful if someone deciding not to buy has the power to wreck your entire self-concept. So of course you're going to have some maladaptive marketing mechanisms to protect from that. But and just FYI, if you recognize yourself in that, you're really going to want to work with me as your marketing confidence cheerleader, because we really work on teasing apart these beliefs so that what happens in your business, what happens in data, we stop interpreting in these default cruel ways about ourselves. It takes a lot of the risk out of marketing. It takes a lot of the risk out of failure because we've separated what that means from our identity, our vision of ourself, our confidence. So you can work with me one-on-one as your marketing confidence cheerleader, or in my group program for excellently eccentric entrepreneurs, which is the squad. More info on that in the show notes. Anyway, now back to regularly scheduled programming. But the thing is, you see this dance, you see how we're our stories are misfiring, our self-image is getting tied into this in a weird way. And so when we are super formal as a maladaptive marketing mechanism to cope with this stuff that's going on internally, I think the people on the receiving end, encountering that super formal marketing, can kind of feel it, that it's actually not about them and their problem. It's about you and how you see yourself. They might not consciously realize it to that degree, but there's something about that that's off-putting, that people can feel repelled rather than attracted by. We'll get more into that in a bit. But what I want to drive home here is that the paradox is that when that's the focus of your marketing, you will not sell as much because you are not talking to your people about what matters to them. When it's just about how you want them to see you, perfect, invulnerable, formal, professional, sterile, clinical, your marketing is only asking. It's not giving. It's asking for them to validate you, to tell you that you're enough, that you're good enough, that you get to think about yourself in the way you want to think about yourself. It's outsourcing validation. But, I'll talk more about that in a minute. But when marketing is actually about, the focus is on your aligned customer, how to help them solve their problems, how to give them something of value, how to benefit them immediately with what they are experiencing, you actually have the opportunity to give them an immediate value add, an immediate benefit, an immediate good feeling like, wow, that was awesome, simply by being lucky enough to stumble across your marketing. Because you have better believe they'll form a positive impression of you when your marketing alone genuinely helps them with something they're struggling with. Okay, so let's get more into like how this is getting mixed up with our self-image, with our confidence in ourselves as business owners, as entrepreneurs. It can feel really vulnerable when you go against a whole lifetime of conditioning that you're not allowed to do this, that you just up and one day decide that you're going to give yourself permission to imbue yourself with the power to validate yourself. So, again, when the secret goal of your marketing is to validate how you think you're allowed to see yourself based on how others react, whether they buy or not, follow or not, whatever, your marketing is doing a bit of a bait and switch. In a weird way, and bear with me for a minute because I'm not blaming you, I'm not calling you out, and well, I'll tell you why in a minute. But it's kind of akin to like the stereotype of a used car salesman, like a sleazy used car salesman where he's giving the vibes like, I'm offering you something that sounds really great, but it probably isn't because I want your money more than I want to do right by you. So I'm just going to tell you everything you want to hear, everything I think you're looking for, whether or not it's accurate, because my number one goal is getting your money, not necessarily benefiting you. Which is icky, right? Like it's a sleazy stereotype because we don't like to be sold to like that. It feels gross and swindly. And us as good-hearted, good people who are entrepreneurs going into business, we don't want our customers to feel like that. We don't want to do that to them. But we are in this weird way when this is the case. Deciding you're not allowed to believe in the value of your offer until your sales validate it is actually assigning non-consensual emotional labor to your customers. It's asking others to buy something that you don't buy yourself. It's asking others to believe in something that you don't believe yourself so you can feel better and profit. Which, and I'm going to hold your hand while I say this, is a form of manipulation and gaslighting. The kind of tactic that has most of us feeling really gross when this shows up in marketing. And we don't want to do that. But, if you recognize yourself in this dynamic, you're like, oh shit, I am accidentally assigning the entire responsibility of whether or not I get to believe in my offer and the value I provide in myself as a business owner. I'm actually assigning the whole responsibility of that to other people, to the people encountering my marketing, to my customers. Ooh, I didn't realize I was doing that. It's really likely that especially if you're in my audience, because I don't think all my consensual sales messaging tends to attract jerks. I don't think you're a jerk listening to this. So it's likely that you're doing this on accident, subconsciously, not because you're a sleazy, slimy, manipulative meanie who's out to screw people over just to serve yourself. It's because you've been deeply conditioned to believe that validation only gets to come from outside in, and that it's so wrong to let it come from inside out. You may have even received punishment or criticism when you validated yourself, when you showed up too confident and people called it arrogant or what have you. So a lot of us who struggle with this, who have been conditioned our whole lives that we are not allowed to believe in ourselves or have boundaries or feel confidence or be or get what we want until someone outside of us tells us we're allowed to, that we have permission, external permission to feel this way about ourselves or move in this way. If we've received a lifetime of conditioning of that, this requires an identity shift. So it's like literally reprogramming, rewiring your brain and how you think about yourself and the world, which please get support with that if you find yourself in this position. I want every entrepreneur to have access to mental health care with licensed mental health professionals. And this is also why I started the marketing confidence cheerleading side of my business, where I help people with doing this very thing, with handling the emotions and the mindset that needs to get upgraded when you go into business for yourself as an entrepreneur. So again, how to work with me on that, how to join the squad in the show notes. But, okay, yes. So this requires an identity shift so that you know you're allowed to grant yourself permission to be confident, to see the potential for the value you provide, to charge money for it, to feel worthy of receiving the money you want and need in all of your glorious vulnerability and imperfection, so that you give yourself permission to charge a price to access your gifts before someone comes along and says you're allowed to set that boundary for access to your labor, your energy, your genius. And let me tell you, shifting your identity, finding all those sneaky, mean thoughts about yourself you didn't realize were deep conditioned, deep baked in there, like doing this kind of identity shift work, this can feel really vulnerable. It's uncomfortable. And dropping a mask that you've worn forever feels vulnerable. Becoming conscious of unhealthy, unhelpful ways you've been moving that you weren't yet aware of, like that level of accountability, it's uncomfortable. So when we hit up against these growth edges, we might be seeing this as outsiders in your marketing as a protective mask of formality. And that protective mask of formality indicates you got some inner work to do. You might not be ready for us. You might not be ready for all of the stuff we add in, especially if we have the power to completely change how you feel about yourself, how confident you feel in your work, in your business, and your identity. Like, that's a lot of responsibility. So it actually indicates you are ready. You are ready. You have space. You have the spoons. You have the capacity to hold on all the extra stuff that comes with clients when you are confident enough to share the vulnerability necessary to be a safe space to hold clients' vulnerability in your marketing. So I do have an episode you might want to go back and listen to if you're like, yeah, but how much is TMI? So it's how much of your personal story should you share in your small business marketing? And I highly recommend you go back and listen to that episode because it'll help you, give you some guidelines for what are you ready to share, what's important to share, and what's just for you. And this is entirely up to you. I trust your judgment on this, but if you're not sure, go listen to that episode. Okay. So if you're listening to this and you're like, Isa, I need to be formal in my marketing. I need my website to sound super formal. I need to sound super formal when I go teach these educational videos on YouTube or TikTok or whatever. because I am in a clinically sterile profession and I am getting paid for my knowledge, not my ability to empathize. Okay. Okay. Let's get into the nuance. So you're right. When you are picking your SEO strategy, like what keywords do we want to rank for on Google so that we show up when people are searching for us, like you're a personal injury lawyer or you have an oncology clinic. I don't know, like something like that. Yes, you're right. There we want to be crisp and clean and straight to the point about like what is it you do? What do you provide? Yeah. Yeah. But I do not care what profession you're in. Research shows that buying is an emotional decision based on how a person thinks they will feel when they buy. So, if you are a doctor with no bedside manner and your clinic's marketing has no indication of empathy or willingness to entertain nuance in your patient's unique cases, any hint that you actually care about how your patient feels receiving medical care from you, I bet you're going to have a harder time in private practice than a clinic or a private practice that is much better at establishing values of the clinic, establishing care for the patient experience, establishing empathy for what they're going through. And if you are a lawyer who disdains your client and has zero empathy for their situation, you better have a fucking fantastic track record of making your clients a whole boatload of money, or no one will want to work with you. And even then, if there is another lawyer who can make clients as much money or even less money, but still a decent amount without making it a miserable experience to work with them, who genuinely cares about the human behind the client, like, who do you think customers will prefer to work with? Who do you think they're going to be referring people to? Who's less likely to be reported to the bar or whatever? Like, mere formality does not give people much to connect with, and not nearly as much as marketing that communicates personality, values, and humanity. So here's the thing. I know a lot of you might be feeling anxiety. You're like, I wasn't taught this in school, or I had a lot of bosses that would argue with you on this, Issa. Here's what I would argue. Formality belongs to an outdated notion of professionalism. And thanks to social media, marketing is constantly evolving, constantly being innovated. Like, you don't go viral for doing it the same way everybody else does, for blending in. The opposite. The innovators go viral. The one-of-a-kinds go viral. So if you want to stand out from the vast sea of competition, if you want to impart a strong pull to work with you, specifically you better be recognizable as well, you. So this is why uber formal, polished sounding marketing copy does not do much for you. Because formality sanitizes, it smooths over, it blends you in. And blends you into what? An old notion of work that required us to check our humanity at the door? That for ages openly discriminated against women, people of color, queer folk, people with disabilities, and other marginalized identities. And while that discrimination might not be as commonly out in the open these days, you can't argue the continued pay disparity. That is the old institution of work that got to define what our mainstream concept of professionalism is. So let me ask you, my people, do you want to be professional by that yardstick? Or do you want, or as I suspect, did you go into business for yourself to create better options than the systems that are continually failing us? Because I think, if you're my people, that's a big reason behind why you do what you do. So if you did that, if you went into business, if you opened your business to create better options, better possibilities for us, stop trying to assimilate into systems you're trying to transform, including in your marketing. All right, let's hammer it home a little more. Why I want you to drop this formality bullshit in your marketing. Boring does not sell. Boring does not sell. So I gotta tell you, I see a correlation between super formal marketing and wordiness. Lots of decorum and talking around things and being oh so polite and delicate. But can you recall a single verbose tagline or slogan that had an impact on you? Probably not. The ones you remember tend to be short and impactful. Nike's infamous "just do it" is just 3 words. And if I say, taste the rainbow, I bet you're tasting Skittles right now. And if I say, easy, breezy, beautiful, I bet you've joined in time to say CoverGirl with me. We like it so short that there is no time to lose their attention. We like it so right to the point there is no time to lose their attention. We like it so iconic it establishes instant relevance. There is not time for polite, vague formality. Research shows we only have seconds or less to capture a web visitor's attention. We don't have time to be formal and verbose and get around to the point. We need it right now up front. Pack it with punch. Impolitely. No, just kidding. Doesn't have to be impolite. Okay. Also, formality sanitizes us, blends us in, makes us a professional among a sea of professionals, and sounding like everyone else does not sell. Look, the truth is your customers have infinite options. Like not many, so many other talented providers they could work with. Not just this vast, enormous sea of competition, but also you're competing with do it yourself or don't do anything at all about it. Attractive options for a lot of folks. Marketing is only effective when it makes buying a no-brainer. As in, they don't have to think hard about it and get caught up in the analysis paralysis trap where they make no decision at all or research all their options really hardcore and then pick something, but wonder if they made the wrong choice and then buying satisfaction goes down. But the thing is, whenever you are asking for an investment, like I said before, you're kind of asking your customers for a trust fall. Trust that they will benefit the way that you say that they will. Trust that you're a reputable brand that won't screw them over. Trust that they can expect quality service, which is why customers typically need to feel familiar with a brand and encounter marketing messaging several times before they feel psychologically safe enough to buy. So part of getting the sale is getting them to remember who you are and have positive associations with your brand. And let me ask you, how are you going to do that if your marketing copy, if your marketing presence, if your marketing voice is all formality and no personality? If you are so professional, you are indistinguishable from every other professional. Sounding like everyone else does not give your customer the sense of safety you think it does. Sounding like you does, because they know whose arms their trust falling into. So if formality is not the move, then what is? And let me reassure you, my dear listener, that it's easier than you think. Just write how you talk. Talk how you talk in your marketing. So especially if you're a coach, a one-on-one service provider, a personal brand, yes, you want them to get a sense of what it's like to work with you from your marketing. We don't want a surprise, like the way you sound in your marketing, the way you sound on your social media sounds like a whole ass different person than what they get when they buy and actually work with you. We don't want that. And here's the thing, when you just make it sound like you, when you just talk how you talk, write how you talk, this is the good thing about it, or one of the many good things, is that it instantly differentiates you. You are instantly distinguishable from the competition when you talk how you talk, when you write how you talk, because nobody does you better than you. So when you are the youiest you possible, you stand out. You are more memorable. People have more of an opportunity to establish safety, familiarity, and trust with you, meaning they are more likely to buy from you. Now, if this sounds like a whole lot of work and you're like, yeah, Issa, you convinced me, it sounds good, but this feels overwhelming. I'm going to have to change how I write. I'm going to have to change how I approach stuff. It already seemed like a lot of work to do marketing. It already seemed like a lot of work. I just want to let you know I can take it off your plate. So over here at Emmy's Messaging, we can build a whole website in the voice of the best possible version of you, and it can be done with less than 3 hours of work on your part. All you got to do is you got to show up for our strategy session at the start of the project, send over some background info that you already have, and we'll work our magic and hone it till you love it. So I do all sorts of copywriting. If you're interested specifically in a website, we also do brand kits, so getting your visual identity in order. We do website copywriting. We do your sales pages. We can do web design, and if you bundle it all together, so you just want us to do the whole ass website for you, no problem. And you get 11% off when you bundle it. Other copywriting we can do is we can handle content marketing. We can write your blog. We can write your socials. All kinds of ways we can take it off your plate. So, if it just feels like you've been trying and it's just too much heavy lifting, let us handle it. Just let us handle it. Links in the show notes, and my email is always open. All right, well, that was today's episode. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Leave us a kind review. Share this with your friends and colleagues. Save it. Help us get it out there to more fabulous people such as yourself. All right, Kay, love you. Bye.